on time for fan meet and greet and autograph sessions, pretty much spitting in fans' faces. Fans who traveled maybe across the country to get that opportunity. Fans who maybe saved month after month after month after month to get enough money to buy a plane ticket, save enough money to get a train ticket, to get All-Star tickets, to get a hotel, to get an opportunity to meet and greet some of their favorite players. There was one player that showed up to these meet and greets on time. There was one player that wasn't out the night before grinding in the club.
The children were in tears, while the stars were nowhere to be found. Families spent over $2,700 just to catch a glimpse of their idols, only to be met with empty chairs and cold shoulders. It was the ultimate betrayal of the very people who keep the league alive. While the fans waited in the heat for hours, the players they admired were busy elsewhere, treating a professional obligation like a mere suggestion. This wasn't just a scheduling conflict, it was a slap in the face to every person who had saved for months to be there. The WNBA is at a crossroads, and the behavior of certain stars is pushing fans right out the door.
There was one player that showed up to these meet and greets on time. There was one player that wasn't out the night before grinding in the club. There was one player that actually does go above and beyond. There's one player that actually does put in the extra work. There's actually one player that clearly doesn't feel entitled to the fans she has. She understands she needs to work for those fans that she has. She needs to appreciate the fans that she has. While the rest of the league, they think they're owed something. Let's get right into it, shall we? Like the video, hype the video.
The entitlement in the WNBA has reached a level that is honestly hard to believe. Many of these players seem to think they are owed a fan base without having to go the extra mile. They want the million-dollar salaries and the private jets, but they don't want to show up on time for the people who make those things possible. It is a classic case of wanting the rewards without putting in the work. If you had never followed the league, you wouldn't think this kind of diva behavior could exist in a league that is still fighting for mainstream respect. They are spitting in the faces of the very people who traveled across the country to support them.
Players deserved better. Now, this is only one example. In the comments, there's another example. I reached out to somebody who was in Chicago during the All-Star weekend. Apparently, only a few players actually took this serious. Apparently, only a few players actually respect the fans that spend their money. We attended WNBA Live and waited in line over 2 hours to meet a couple of the top name athletes. They showed up 40 minutes late, signed autographs for 10 minutes, and left. This happened several times throughout the weekend.
Imagine saving every penny for months to buy a plane ticket, a hotel room, and expensive tickets just to meet your favorite player. You get to the venue, wait in a line that stretches around the block, and then you're told the player is leaving after only 10 minutes. This happened repeatedly throughout the weekend in Chicago. It is heart-wrenching to hear about kids in tears because their idols couldn't be bothered to stay for their scheduled time. These are the moments that break a fan's spirit for good. You can't buy back that kind of loyalty once you've thrown it away for a few extra minutes of sleep or a night at the club.
They showed up 40 minutes late, signed autographs for 10 minutes, and left. This happened several times throughout the weekend. My children were in tears after waiting for hours only to be turned away. To be fair, there were a few players who showed up on time to everything. Caitlin Clark, in particular, was punctual for every obligation she had. She gave away her shoes, signed autographs, hugged fans, and competed hard in the All-Star game, where we bought 6 tickets at over $450 each, more than $2,700 for our family to be there. She clearly understands.
Caitlin Clark clearly understands that fans can make or break a career. She was punctual for every single obligation she had, despite facing more pressure than anyone else in the building. She treated every fan like they were the most important person there, and it showed. She wasn't out at the club until 4 a.m., partying with teammates. She was focused on the job. This is why the league seems to be split in two right now. You have the professionals who want to grow the game, and you have the sorority-minded members who just want to hang out and collect a paycheck while doing the bare minimum for the public.
6 tickets at over $450 each, more than $2,700 for our family to be there. She clearly understands that fans can make or break a career, and she came across as a genuinely good person. I was deeply disappointed in several of the other players, showing up 40 minutes late and signing autographs for 10 minutes and leaving. Now, reading this at first, you would say, oh yeah, that sounds exactly like the entitled brats in the WNBA. No need to second guess, no need to second question. This sounds like something that WNBA players...
The criticism isn't just coming from random internet trolls. It is coming from the people who were actually there on the ground. People are calling out the league for acting more like a sorority than a professional sports organization. There is a specific image that some of these players want to promote, and it often involves a level of behavior that doesn't sit well with family audiences. When clips of players acting wild in clubs make their way to social media, right alongside stories of them skipping fan signings, it creates a toxic brand. The league needs to decide what it wants to be before it loses the momentum it has finally gained.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like the entitled brats in the WNBA. No need to second guess, no need to second question. This sounds like something that WNBA players would do every time if they had the ultimate divas, the ultimate diva athletes to ever exist. The most entitled athletes to ever exist, entitled, and they deliver a substandard product outside of CC22. You take another look. We were at WNBA Live Friday and Saturday. Almost everyone was...
Paige Bueckers being late to back-to-back events became a major talking point for those in the know. Being late to one event is an accident, but being late to every event is a pattern. It shows a lack of respect for the organizers and the fans who are paying for those experiences. Whether it was the DoorDash event or the Ally meet and greet, the story remained the same. People were left waiting while the star of the show was nowhere to be found. It is a dangerous game to play when you are trying to compete with the likes of Caitlin Clark, who is setting the gold standard for what it means to be a true professional.
We are leaning towards the latter. Those starlets are so full of themselves, can't even respect those fans' time and effort to attend the event. Doesn't surprise me. Nope. Not at all. They were all drunk. Is that an excuse? We went to WNBA Live all 3 days. I recall Paige being late to her appearances, but I'd guess most of it was due to how many appearances she made. She had a 1-hour meet and greet for DoorDash, then an hour for Ally back-to-back. She was late to both.
The criticism directed toward Caitlin Clark often stems from the fact that she is held to a higher standard, and she consistently meets it. She isn't part of the club scene, and she doesn't engage in the locker room politics that seem to plague the WNBA. Because she chooses to be a professional rather than part of the clique, she becomes a target. The league appears to favor players they can control or those who fit a certain mold, and Clark simply doesn't fit it. She is focused, dedicated, and committed to the fans above all else. This makes others look bad, and they clearly resent her for shining a light on their shortcomings.
A former CEO of Leaf Trading Cards says, this girl, speaking about injuries, this girl effed me on my autograph exclusive with her with lies and deceit to trick me into letting her out of her deal. All-Star Weekend has exposed a lot of people. A lot of people. You got Paige and Heidemann and AZ Fudd and all these other players grinding on each other in the club, taking off their shirt.
Let's talk about the specific incident at WNBA Live. Fans reported that almost every player was at least 30 minutes late to their scheduled appearances. It was described as a chaotic environment, where the athletes seemed more interested in their own social circles than the people who paid to see them. Some stars signed autographs for only 10 minutes before being whisked away by their handlers. When you are charging hundreds of dollars for tickets, that kind of service is unacceptable. It is the kind of behavior that would get you fired in almost any other profession, yet, in the WNBA, it seems to be the norm. The league's president and officials need to take a long look at the footage coming out of these events. Seeing players taking their shirts off, dancing suggestively, and partying in clubs while fans are complaining about being ignored creates a PR nightmare. This is the image the league is currently promoting, and it is exactly why they are struggling to maintain the surge of interest that Caitlin Clark brought in. You cannot expect the general public to buy into a product that doesn't respect its own audience. The disconnect between the players and the reality of the business is growing wider by the day. Sophie Cunningham was one of the few other players who actually seemed to understand that. She was spotted meeting and greeting fans with a genuine smile. She understood the assignment. It shouldn't be this difficult to find players who are willing to fulfill the basic requirements of their job. The fact that we have to point out the few who were on time tells you everything you need to know about the state of the league. It is a sad day when being professional is considered an outlier. The fans deserve a league where everyone is as committed as Clark and Cunningham. There is a deeper issue here regarding the culture of certain groups within the league. Some critics have pointed out that the league feels more like a closed club than an inclusive sports environment. When you have players like Paige and others prioritizing their social lives over their professional responsibilities, it sends a message that the fans are an afterthought. They seem to enjoy the perks of fame without accepting the responsibilities that come with it. This isn't just about one bad weekend in Chicago, it is about a systemic lack of accountability that starts at the top and trickles down to the stars. The betrayal of the fans is the most painful part of this entire saga. These are the people who buy the jerseys, watch the games, and defend the players on social media. To treat them with such disregard is a recipe for disaster. When a family spends over $2,000 and leaves in tears, you have failed as both an entertainer and an athlete. No amount of highlights or flashy plays can make up for that kind of personal disappointment. The players need to realize that their platform is a privilege, not a right, and that privilege can be taken away very quickly by an angry fan base. Some people try to make excuses, saying the players are tired or overworked during All-Star Weekend. But if Caitlin Clark can handle the most grueling schedule in the league and still show up on time with a positive attitude, what is everyone else's excuse? It comes down to character and respect. You are either a professional who values your supporters, or you are a diva who thinks the world revolves around you. The fans are noticing who is who, and they are voting with their wallets. The players who think they are untouchable might be in for a very rude awakening in the coming seasons. Reports of players being drunk or hungover during fan events are particularly damaging. It is one thing to have fun on your own time, but when it starts to bleed into your professional commitments, it becomes a major problem. Fans don't want to meet a player who is clearly checked out or still smelling like the night before. They want to meet the athlete they see as a hero on the court. This behavior is what leads to the degenerate label that some critics are now using to describe the WNBA. It is a label the league should be desperate to avoid, yet they seem to be leaning into it. Paige Bueckers has a lot of explaining to do to her loyal followers. While she is undeniably talented, her reputation for being late to appearances is starting to overshadow her skills on the court. You can't be the face of a brand if that brand is known for being unreliable. Every time she shows up late, she is sending her fans the message that her time is more valuable than theirs. That is a dangerous message to send to the people who are, essentially, her employers. The competition for attention in the sports world is too fierce to be this careless with your public image and your fan relationships. The contrast between how Caitlin Clark was treated by the league and how she treated the fans is another layer of this mess. While she was being professional and giving her all, she was often met with coldness from her peers. It is almost as if being a good person and a dedicated professional makes her an outcast in this environment. The irony is that she is the one providing the most value to the league while also being the one they seem to appreciate the least. It is a backward system that rewards bad behavior and punishes those who genuinely want to elevate the sport to a higher level. We also have to look at the influence of the veteran players who are setting this tone. If the leaders of the league are the ones out at clubs and showing up late, younger players will assume that is how they are supposed to behave. It is a failure of leadership across the board. The WNBA needs to implement stricter rules and real consequences for players who neglect their fan obligations. Without accountability, this behavior will only continue to get worse until the league becomes little more than a glorified hobby for a few entitled athletes who don't care about growing the game. The stud buds and the specific cliques that have formed within the league are creating a divide that is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. When these groups become more focused on their own internal drama and party lifestyles than on the fans, everyone loses. Footage of partying and clubbing might generate views on social media, but it doesn't sell tickets to families who want to bring their children to a game. Instead, it alienates a huge portion of the potential audience. The league needs to decide whether it wants to be a niche product for a small group or a global powerhouse that appeals to everyone. At the end of the day, the fans are the ones who determine the fate of the WNBA. If they continue to be treated like second-class citizens by the players they support, they will simply stop showing up. Caitlin Clark has shown everyone what is possible when you combine elite talent with elite professionalism. It is time for the rest of the league, including stars like Paige Bueckers, to decide which path they want to take. Will they continue to live in a bubble of entitlement, or will they finally step up and give the fans the respect they deserve? The future of the game depends on that choice.